Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is the Choices Community of Practice June Coffee Chat. I hope that everyone is doing well and is enjoying the start of the summer season. The topic for today's coffee chat is what's up with school wellness, putting physical activity policies into practice. My name is Molly Garrone. I'm a senior communications coordinator for the Choices Project at the Prevention Research Center on Nutrition and Physical Activity at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. And as always, it's my pleasure to be facilitating this coffee chat. As always, I want to acknowledge our funders who make this work possible and also share that our Choices work and events are for research and educational purposes only. The intention of today's coffee chat is to provide information, tools, and resources to inform and educate, and we are not looking to influence any specific legislation. If you are unfamiliar with the Choices Community of Practice, I will just briefly describe what it is. The Choices Community of Practice includes people whose work focuses on advancing obesity prevention, healthy eating, and active living, and want to learn more about how cost-effectiveness analysis can advance their efforts and address health equity. And it's our goal to support these efforts by providing tools, resources, and training opportunities. Our coffee chats are unique, informal opportunities to gather together, gather ideas, and get to know each other better. And for today's event, we'll be listening to a short presentation from our guest speaker, and then we will have some time for a full group discussion. And we encourage all of you to share any questions or comments in the chat throughout the event today. So for today's coffee chat, we will be focusing on the role of school wellness policies in promoting physical activity among students. Our goals for the session today are to learn about the role of school wellness policies in promoting physical activity, to identify key partner organizations and data needed to inform the development of these policies, and for all of you to have a chance to network with and learn from each other about opportunities and current resources to support this work. We are really excited to be joined by Nicole Good from the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Nicole is a school wellness specialist at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education in the Office for Food and Nutrition Programs. Nicole works to support and advance wellness initiatives for Massachusetts students, schools, and communities. Nicole participated as a fellow in the Rennie Center's Massachusetts Education Policy Fellowship and has presented on wellness to school committees, superintendents, and school business officials. Nicole is a firm believer in the importance of policy work that supports the whole child. So welcome, Nicole. We are really excited to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, Molly. Excited to be here.
So I think at this time, I'm going to turn it over to you, Nicole. So please take it away.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm thrilled to be here. For those of you that are joining a little bit late, my name is Nicole Good. I am at the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and I am a school wellness specialist. So I work very closely with our districts that participate in the National School Lunch and our Breakfast Program to ensure that they have an updated and compliant local wellness policy. It seems like a lot of you on this call are aware of what's going on with the local wellness policy and in tune. So let's have some of this presentation perhaps serve as a refresher. In addition, if you are tuning in and your state did accept some of the USDA's COVID-19 waivers around the local wellness policy, this is also a great reminder that the triennial assessment deadline is June 30th. So perhaps if you're working with some schools or some communities that are looking to update their policy, this can be some friendly reminders. The slides will be shared with you after this presentation, so you can feel free to utilize those as well if you have some people that are working to update their policies before that June 30th deadline. Next slide, please. So I like to start every presentation with this prompt. I want you to think about if you can perform well. Performance being as a health practitioner, a friend, brother, sibling, parent, partner, if you are tired, if you are hungry, perhaps you missed breakfast or lunch, if you are running around from project to project and you are stressed, or relevant to today's presentation, if you have been sitting for long periods of time. And the reason I bring this up and have folks think about it is oftentimes when we talk about school wellness, we really want to think about providing an environment that is reflective of health and wellness for our students. But it's also really important to think about our administrators, our teachers, our community members, and wellness is really for everyone. And we want to make sure that we are incorporating things into our day and really taking a step back and thinking, if we haven't slept, if we haven't eaten, if we're feeling stressed, how can we perform well? And at the same time, how can we expect our students to do the same if they're coming to school and they're not able to meet some of these things? Next slide, please. So it seems like based on the poll, many of you are familiar with this, but just a friendly reminder, and for folks that are maybe new to the wellness policy, the purpose of the local wellness policy is to establish a school environment that promotes students' health, well-being, and ability to learn. I utilize the picture on this slide. Wellness is an interesting term, especially in this post-pandemic era where there are so many things that fall underneath the wellness umbrella. And I'm going to touch on a couple different things today, but our main focus and what I'm going to laser in on is going to be around physical activity. But what we find is when we're able to incorporate movement in the classroom, in the community, and we're able to pair that with things like health education, and we're able to create policies around movement breaks and mindfulness, we're really working to create an environment that supports the whole child, supports the whole school, and in return can really lead to academic success and an environment where our students can really grow, develop, and learn. Next slide, please. So again, most of you are familiar with the local wellness policy, but I find it very helpful, even for myself. I do this work every single day to be kind of reminded of how did we get here? How did we get to the point of a local wellness policy being a requirement? How did we, what kind of legislation was in action? So a little bit of a timeline here for those of you. Back in 2004, the local wellness policy requirement was established by the Child Nutrition and Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infant, and Children, also known as WIC Reauthorization Act. So that was the first time we really saw kind of this local wellness policy come to fruition. In 2010, the Obama administration implemented the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act, and that required any school or district participating in the National School Lunch and or Breakfast Program to develop a local wellness policy. But what really, really is important to remember here is 2016. So the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, implemented what was called the final rule. And all schools were required to develop a revised local wellness policy by July 30th, 2017, with the final rule outlining the requirements of the local wellness policy, who should be involved in the local wellness policy development and implementation, and then also with the federal regulation that policies must be developed and must be evaluated and updated every 3 years. If you were late to join the call, friendly reminder, if your state accepted the USDA's triennial assessment waiver, we are coming up to that deadline of June 30th, 2023. So again, let this presentation serve as a reminder of what needs to be in that policy and who needs to be involved. So 2004, 2010, 2016, all kind of things we're seeing at the federal level, right? But in 2018, I find it important to kind of include in here is in Massachusetts, we were really seeing a gap. This final rule was established. We were communicating out to our districts and to our school nutrition programs, but there was a gap in our understanding of what districts really needed around school wellness and what we could provide and what their challenges were. So we took a step back, and I encourage you throughout this presentation, whether you are joining from a school or you're from a health council, to think about what does the dialogue and what does the conversation look like with you in schools? Do you know what the challenges are around school wellness? And do you know what the best practices are? Through this assessment, we found that time and funding were two major challenges, probably not a surprise. It's most challenges that we see in life. But we found that we needed to really create some resources and some programs that could help our districts get to local wellness compliance. And then even more important, is get that policy off of a shelf, sitting on a shelf, and getting it into implementation. Next slide, please. So I talked about, the timeline here, and then what is the purpose of the local wellness policy, how we solve requirements from the federal level. But the really important thing to note here is who's involved. Again, if you're listening in and you're from a public health council, really important to get involved with that school wellness committee. That's going to be kind of takeaway item number one from this presentation. The school wellness committee is responsible for updating, implementing that local wellness policy. And it really should be a multidisciplinary group of people. So oftentimes, and in our office, we have a saying that school wellness is everyone's job. If you think back up to where I said that Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act and anybody participating in the National School Lunch or Breakfast Program must have a local wellness policy. The policy oftentimes is housed in school nutrition, but is so critical to have others on board. When we're thinking about physical activity and physical education policy, making sure we have those health teachers, our PE teachers involved. What's going on in the community? Are we hearing from our PTOs, from our PTAs? Are they involved in this? And also our students, do they feel like they're sitting for long periods of time? Do they feel like they would benefit from a brain break or from a movement break in the classroom? What is the community seeing? What is the data that perhaps you at public health councils are taking and have that you can share with schools? I'm going to share some data at the national level later, but what can be shared with schools to help create and implement policy that can help students to thrive in the classroom? And then finally, kind of an overarching message that I'll have today throughout my presentation, that equity piece is huge. Making sure that folks have a seat at the table to not only develop the policy, but to have their voice heard with implementation. Bringing it back again to physical activity. If students don't have an opportunity or a safe place for them to be active outside of school, doing this in school, a 5-minute movement break in the classroom and having that be a policy is an opportunity for every student in your state, in your Commonwealth, to be active, which is really important. Next slide, please. Local wellness policy requirements. I'll kind of breeze through these a little bit because based on what we had in the poll, it seems like a lot of you are familiar with that. One friendly reminder I like to give is that at the beginning of the slide deck, I showed that apple with the word wellness in the center. And then there were a bunch of different words around it: mindfulness, social emotional learning, nutrition, health education, physical activity, etc. You're going to see a lot of the requirements of the local wellness policy be centered around nutrition. Again, because that federal requirement comes from the USDA and the National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program are underneath that. That does not mean by any means that other things are not important. And it's really, really important to include the additional requirements that you see on the screen. I'll highlight just a few here, but the one we're going to talk about a lot today, physical activity and education. Again, if we have students that are sitting all day, we can't expect for them to be able to concentrate in their classroom, do well on their standardized testing. Everyone needs to get up, get that brain flowing, and improve that cognitive function. Nutrition education, our students learning in the school day about the body, how important movement is, how important movement is for your cardiovascular system, things like that. And the other one I like to highlight as well, marketing in the schools. Are the messages that you're sending to your students similar and in line with what's being served as part of your school meal programs or the activity messages that you're sending? Anytime we can kind of reinforce healthy habits and students can see them is really helpful for them to continue with these habits as they continue on with their life. And then finally, third time's a charm for all of you here. If you're up for that triennial assessment and you accepted that waiver in your state, that June 30th deadline is approaching. Why does the policy need to be updated every 3 years? Think about turnover that you see. Think about how much has changed just in the public health world in the past 3 years. Really important to making sure that policy has in it what you're actually doing. And if it has things you're not doing, looking at it and kind of reassessing. Next slide, please. So that is kind of the who, the what, and the timeline of the local wellness policy. But today's focus is really on physical activity implementation. Next slide, please. So the how. We know we need to have a wellness committee that needs to be comprised of a group of many different people. But one thing that is really helpful as you are developing a policy, as your committee is meeting, is to think about the data that is out there. I know the Choices team will probably be sharing some of their resources after this session. They have incredible resources as well around physical activity and classroom movement breaks and how that can be beneficial to, children's overall health and preventing obesity. But one thing I wanted to share with you all today, and something that we really utilize in Massachusetts, is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey data. If you're not familiar with it, this is something that is implemented by the CDC and is utilized to monitor priority health risk behaviors, including leading causes of death, disease, and social problems among youth. So the data I'm sharing today is from the national level. Kind of takeaway number 2 here when we're thinking about wellness policies and data and things like that is, if you are not already partnering with whoever it is housed in. So in Massachusetts, I am lucky to have a partner that works on the YRBS surveys within the Department of Education. Some states you might have it part of your public health department or health council. Definitely be in tune on what is going on within your state because that data can really help to drive policy. So the one here that I'm sharing, again, national level from 2021, high school students who spend 3 or more hours per day on screen time is 75.9% as reported in this YRBS data. I'll point out here again, this data is not inclusive of screen time related to school. It's anything that's going to be related to outside of school. So this is something that you could come look at it at your state level, consult with your public health department, consult with your Department of Education and say, hey, we have a lot of high school students spending all this time on screen time. What can we do in school? What messages can we provide in our nutrition or health education? Utilize this data to drive the policy. Next slide, please. On the flip side of this, I like to share this statistic. Again, same thing at the national level here, but 46.8% of high school students reported attending PE classes on 1 or more days. So we had our previous slide where we have about 76% of high school students are spending 3 or more hours on screen time. And then we have our high school students at the same time, only 46% of them are attending PE classes on 1 or more days. So we're seeing that there's definitely a gap there of the amount of physical activity that students are getting and the amount of screen time that they're having as well. Again, all data that can be great to drive policy change. Next slide, please. So the big question here, and I've kind of been touching on it a little bit, is how do you develop these school wellness partnerships? If you're housed in a department of public health or a health council, and you don't have kind of that relationship or maybe current dialogue with what's going on with the schools, how do you do it? This slide here depicts a bunch of different people. We have our school nutrition directors, our teachers, our families. No surprise here that when we conducted that needs assessment that I mentioned in the beginning of this chat, that when you have everybody on board, it's where you're going to see the most success. The districts that reported having the most challenges and the schools that reported having the most challenges are the ones where they felt only 1 or 2 people were really involved in wellness. Wellness, like a multitude of other initiatives, can often be times we put on the back burner. Direct quote from our needs assessment. However, when we're able to bring everyone together, when everyone is able to work together, that's when we see the most school wellness success. Next slide, please. So how do you develop these partnerships? 4 easy steps here that I'm going to recommend, and this is how we've kind of seen success in Massachusetts. Number 1, working with your school nutrition directors. So for us in the Office for Food and Nutrition programs, that's our direct audience. However, for my role within school wellness, if it's a policy, I need to speak to the superintendent. I need to work with the school committee or the school board. I also need to be involved with my school nurses and my teachers. So being able to partner with our Department of Public Health and have access to those school nurses that want to make sure things in the policy are reflective of the work that they're doing, and connecting those school nutrition directors is really, really important. Step number 2, it's going to seem really simple, but find that local wellness policy. Chances are it could be available to the public. It should be federal requirement, but it also could be sitting on a shelf somewhere in a superintendent's office. It could be in a binder. It could be unavailable. Find what's in your current policy and look and see if it needs to be updated. Step number 3, what are those physical activity needs? Review your data. If you are from a public health council and you are collecting your own state level data, how can you share that with your key partners that might be at the Department of Education, that might be in the Office of Food and Nutrition programs, if it is separate? Speak with your teachers, speak with the people in your community. Are there limited resources in the communities? You know them best. We all know the schools that have the best playgrounds, the best equipment for recess. But think about, everyone outside of those communities. YMCAs might not be available. Streets might not be safe to play on. Equipment might be limited because there's not enough funding. Really identify the needs that are going to help everyone in the state or in your Commonwealth. And then step number 4, update that local wellness policy. Once you're able to get into policy, make sure you're working to put policy into practice. You can have the best policy in the state, or you can have the best policy in the nation, but if it's sitting somewhere and it's not being implemented, that's not doing it any good. Talk with your teachers, talk with your physical educators. What are they seeing? What are they hearing? Talk with your students. What would they like to see around physical activity? And really work together. Again, with public health departments here, when the policy has been updated and schools have it, how can you help to message that within the audiences that you see? How can you help to say, hey, here's a district and they have a joint use agreement where their gym is open after hours for students to stay and to be physically active? Or, hey, did you know that at this school, they're offering 10-minute movement breaks 3 times a week in grades K through 6? Help be part of communicating that message. Next slide, please. And I'll share here a Massachusetts best practice, because what we've learned is that we can talk about this, the regulations, the data, but what schools really want to hear is a best practice and a success story. So very quickly here, Canton, Massachusetts, this success story was reported from a parent and also from a member of the school wellness committee. Canton school community participated in the Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. If you're unfamiliar with that, I think Jenny is going to throw it into the link, but this is a day that encourages students to remember Ruby Bridges and the incredible work that she did, and also encourages walking to school. I share this one because the success story is a great example of getting many people involved. And a question was also submitted about how can we kind of integrate safe routes to school into the local wellness policy? Great question. So starting at this level, number 1, a classroom teacher encouraged participation in this walk to school day and read the story of Ruby Bridges, and the students were able to learn about the history. That was communicated to the parents and the caregivers. This is what the child was learning. Here's what the walk to school day is. The walk to school day was set up. However, people in the community noticed that there was a lot of high traffic where students needed to go and cross the street to get into school. So between the crossing guard, the community, the families, and the administration at the school, a flashing light was implemented prior to the walk to school day, which then allowed for a permanent, safer route to school. This is a great example of the wellness committee coming together, implementing another opportunity for physical activity, and making this sustainable so that children can continue to walk to school. If you're listening to this story and safe routes to school is something that you haven't explored, I encourage you to reach out to the organization. They're really, really helpful. And also they can provide additional ideas about doing walks perhaps around the school property if it's really hard to develop that route. And Jenny is linking more about safe routes to school in the chat. But again, great success story of having all these people come together to support physical activity and help for more change in the school. Next slide, please. So I'll kind of wrap up here a little bit about Massachusetts school wellness. Again, I find it very helpful to share best practices. This is something I do with other states around local wellness policies, but to give a concrete example is really helpful. And next slide, please. A lot of what I'm going to talk about is kind of based off that needs assessment that we conducted. So in Massachusetts, we have something called SWITCH. It is our school wellness initiative for thriving community health. And we've really found this to be that initiative that has helped us to provide technical assistance, provide guidance to those challenges that were identified in our needs assessment. again, if you're listening to this and you are thinking, I don't really know what's going on in the schools, I'm part of a health council or health department, we found this needs assessment to be our playbook, to be our guidebook, so that we can make informed decisions based exactly on what schools need. Next slide, please. So in Massachusetts, we run something called the School Wellness Coaching Program. Jenny is going to link our school wellness website in the chat. You're welcome to explore it. It's a website that is targeted for our admin. We talk about the importance of physical activity, nutrition, and the brain, and the importance for students to have that integrated into their school day, because that in turn relates to academic success. Our school wellness coaching program is something that we found is really helpful. Our schools sometimes struggle with not only that policy language, but again, getting policy into practice. Through wellness policy improvements and this program, we've helped districts that can implement classroom movement breaks. They're having teachers and administrators sit in the same room to discuss, hey, this is needed. How are we going to do this in a school day? We've had also people make policy changes on their recess. We're finding 10 minutes just isn't enough. Our students need more structured time in recess. And this is a program that is really beneficial, because anytime you have something at a policy, administration needs to be involved. And it's also informing them of, here's what we're seeing, here's what we're hearing, here's the data that's out there, and why this policy needs to be put into place. Next slide, please. I mentioned a little bit throughout this presentation about, different partners, but one thing that our work would not be possible doing, our switch movement, our school wellness coaching program, our website development, is our partners. And that is something, because we can't all do it alone. Coming back to that, school wellness is everyone's job. We've been able to build a website, work with Safe Routes to School, that Canton success story, partner with our PTA to hear what families really want in the schools with policy work. And in addition, getting some grant funding for our districts as well. At the end of this presentation, I did link a national resource, Action for Healthy Kids. Again, coming back to our school wellness needs assessment, time and funding. Our partners help us with the time. Our partners help us to develop initiatives and projects and resources, thinking about busy people, busy educators in mind. And our partners also help with funding, because we know that funding can be limited, unfortunately, when it relates to school wellness. Next slide, please. Here are some resources. I know that you'll be getting these at the end of the presentation. These are all the things that I discussed throughout my presentation. These are related to Massachusetts, but again, kind of broad information that can definitely be helpful for your state. And then the next slide, Jenny, this is going to link to some of the things I talked about. If you have not checked out the CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey Explorer, you can filter the information and the data based on kind of what you're looking for. There is additional data around physical activity and physical education. The Action for Healthy Kids grant funding. Stay tuned to that. That is something that at the beginning of every school year, they often will offer grants around physical activity. And then the Alliance for a Healthier Generation Action Center, if you're not already on it, create a username and password. They have ready to download resources on physical activity cards and directly relating physical activity to things that are being done in the classroom, called Active Academics. Highly recommend. And then finally, if you're looking for additional best practices based on evidence-based research, I linked the CDC strategies for physical activities in school. Next slide, please. My email address is here. I'm also going to put it in the chat. If there's something that you are curious about, if it's more about the needs assessment, more about implementation, struggling with administration getting on board with implementing physical activity education, please feel free to reach out to me. I would be happy to chat. I also, with South Carolina, also lead calls with other states around the local wellness policy and things that are working and not working around implementation. If you'd like to be involved with those, please let me know, and we can certainly invite you to that table. Thank you so much, everyone, and I'll turn it back over to Molly.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Nicole, for that awesome presentation and for giving us a window into the world of school wellness policies and all the key people and groups who are involved in their development. It was so great to hear. And I also love that you were continually emphasizing the importance of supporting the whole child. I think it's a really great message that I want to underscore. So thank you for sharing that along with everything else and all these great resources. So I do have a couple of quick questions I want to ask you just to help connect this presentation and everything that you shared back to our choices work and resources. So again, thanks for sharing all this great information on how these policies can help promote healthy behaviors for students, particularly in Massachusetts, where you are. And I know that you said this in your presentation a little bit, but it sounds like those partnerships from the Switch Coalition in particular were really helpful in moving this wellness policy work forward. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about the different types of partners that you've engaged for this work, and then specifically how might departments of public health get involved in this work and partner with either school districts or departments of education at the state level.
Absolutely. Great question. So I'll start with kind of our partners are, so being obviously at a state agency, it's really helpful to work with different nonprofit organizations and different universities. So we worked with Framingham State University to conduct that school wellness needs assessment. So that was really helpful for us to gather data and gather information to help us to move forward. Our nonprofit organizations are also really helpful in terms of helping us to provide content in some of our things. The PTA, again, or the PTO, if you are not partnering with them, I strongly recommend it. They have an incredible opportunity for you to learn more about what's really going on in different communities and hearing from parents and caregivers and giving them that voice. I will also add in Massachusetts, there's the Department of Education and there's the Department of Public Health. We are both our own state agencies, but I work very closely with our Department of Public Health. Claire Santarelli, who is actually doing some of the work with choices with me around modeling cost-effective strategies in K through 12, has been really great. And through her, I've been able to connect with our director of school health that's housed in the Department of Public Health. So during the pandemic, it was constantly, hey, here's some resources that we have. Can you connect me with these folks? I'm constantly working with school nurses because they're such an integral person. When we think about our school nutrition directors and our school nurses, they touch pretty much every child within the school day. So it's really important to partner with them. And then finally, New England Dairy is one of our also big partners. They have a lot of different funding opportunities that we found have been really helpful because of things that we can't provide. So partnership, again, is really important. Also really important to kind of take a step back and say, you know, how can we best support schools, especially in this post-pandemic era where we're all kind of knowing that there's a lot of burnout with our teachers and educators. There's a lot of talk around learning loss. So how can we continue to support our students as we move forward into these next few years?
Fantastic. Thanks for walking us through all those key partners. Also, in your presentation, you discussed how you review and share research to inform your policy development. And in our choices work, we like to look at how much a particular program or policy might impact health behaviors like physical activity. And you just mentioned this, but our team was fortunate enough to partner with you and the Massachusetts Department of Public Health to evaluate the cost effectiveness of movement breaks in the classroom, which is a program to incorporate short physical activity breaks during class time. So we looked at what might happen if that program was implemented in elementary schools across Massachusetts. And so what information did you learn from this evaluation that may be helpful for your own planning and decision making?
Absolutely. We just published the research brief around movement breaks in the classroom. So I don't know if Jenny had dropped that into the chat yet, but very exciting. And working with the choices team has been very helpful. So I'll go over kind of 3 different things that I have found through this partnership. And again, this is a partnership that I'm doing with the Department of Public Health as well. But the first one being the effect. So the importance of identifying these effective strategies, which have strong evidence for improving in health and promoting physical activity. And movement breaks has that. There is strong evidence that it will improve physical activity if you're able to implement these classroom movement breaks, even if it's just 5 minutes at a time. I think Jenny just dropped that in, but if you look at this brief, you can see that, you know, students, even if it's just 5 minutes over the course of that week, will increase their physical activity by 25 minutes, which again, when we come back to this, that data is really helpful. And so the choices team not only helped us and me understand the effect, but also the reach. who is really important to hear some of these things. We think about in schools, whether it's with policy, so you want to make sure that that's included and that's going to your school board or school committee or health council. That's something I think has been really helpful. And then the final thing as well is cost data. So I mentioned this in our needs assessment. Anytime you want to do something new, people are going to have two questions: time and funding. So when you're explaining that these movement breaks are a really cost-effective opportunity to decrease obesity, to improve physical activity for students, it's really helpful to be able to share that data and pitch that to administration when you want to implement something across an entire district or region, depending on where you are.
Great. Thanks for highlighting those key data points and saying how they can be really compelling for understanding how a certain program can impact a community and also be used for, sort of making the case for investment in a particular program. So that's terrific.